This is the third of 4 videos for Section 4, Chapter 1 of the McGraw-Hill Geometry textbook. So again, 1-4, video 3 of 4. We start off with a bunch of vocabulary here. We measure angles, and when we measure angles, we name them based on their angle measure. That's one way to name a triangle, in fact, which is something you should have learned in middle school. There are 4 that we're going to use in geometry, plus there's a 5th that might come up when you get to pre-calculus / trigonometry. So those 4 types, the first 3 you should definitely know. Acute, which is where the measure is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Using set notation, that would be from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, and it does not include 0 or 90. Okay, a second type would be the right angle, which is where the measure is exactly 90 degrees. We have obtuse angles, which is where our measure is between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. Again, in set notation, we would say 90 to 180, and we would use the curved brackets to show it does not include 90 or 180. And the final one, which is the only one that you probably have never heard of, is the straight angle, which is an angle that measures exactly 180 degrees. In other words, its sides are opposite rays. Now, when you get to trigonometry and pre-calculus, there is a 5th one known as a reflex angle. That is not going to be important for this class, so we're not going to worry about that at this point. Please notice I'm underlining the words acute, right, obtuse, and straight. Those 4 words count as vocabulary words in this course, and you are expected to know them. Now, we need to discuss how to measure an angle using a protractor. So, in class, what I did was I passed out protractors, and I had the class actually draw protractors on this area of the page. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my protractor, and I'm going to label it. So a protractor, you've seen them before, they look like this. Okay? Now it's worth noting that it's going to be difficult for me to do this, by the way. So there is a place on the protractor, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and circle it, and then I'm going to move the protractor to the correct place. Okay? There is a location on the protractor that is basically your point of reference. It's where you start. See the crossing point of those 2 lines, the 0 and the 90? That is called the point of the protractor. Okay? The other thing you're going to need is the 0 line. Notice it here, it's the 0 line. Okay? The way that you measure with a protractor, step 1, you line up the vertex with the point. Hold on a minute, my pen is being annoying. Okay, so we start off, we locate the point, we place the point, this area right here, at the vertex of the angle that we're measuring. Then we line up one side with the 0 line. And where the other side intersects, we'll show our measurement. Now, notice that there are 2 sets of numbers around the outside of the protractor. The inside numbers we would use when we line up the first side of our angle with this side of the zero line. The outside numbers would be what we would read if we'd lined up one side with the negative side of the zero line. So we're going to do a couple of examples. We're going to use our protractor to measure a couple of different angles. And these measurements that I do should match what you do on your own in theory. So, use your protractor to find the measures of angles 1 and 2. Let's start with angle 1. We are going to grab our protractor, which is being a pain in the butt right now. There we go. Okay, we're going to grab our protractor. We're going to put the point at the vertex of the angle, just like that. See how it's right at the vertex. Then we're going to line up our zero line with one side of the angle. Now notice that our measurement is not going to be exact. The best we're going to be able to do is within a half a degree. But notice that the other side is intersecting right here. Now notice that that's two different numbers. There's 50 and 130. In this case, we're going to use the 50 because the 130 is for if we started over here. So we're reading from 0, which is the inside numbers, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, and then I'm going to say about another 1.5 degrees. So I'm going to say that the measure of angle 1 is about 51.5 degrees. I'm not going to say equals because it's not exact. I am reading it. There's human error. So I'm going to use the approximate symbol. But notice this notation here. This is the measure of angle 1. Okay? Now, if you lined up the other line, the other side of the 0 with the other side like this, notice that the outer numbers are going to be what we're reading, and that's also 51.5 degrees. So you just have to make sure that you're reading the correct set of numbers as you go around the outside. Okay, let's measure angle 2. We line up our vertex. Okay. And we line up our 0 line. Let's line it up with the left side this time. There we go. I am seeing about 126 to 126.5. So I would say the measure of angle 2 is approximately 126.5 degrees. Now again, if I lined up the other side of the protractor, so if I lined up this 0 line instead, I would simply be reading the other set of numbers. So if I line up my 0, 125, 6.5. See how it lines up and you have to use the inner numbers? But either way, you should know, using your intuition, which number is the right number. I mean, let's look at these angles. Angle 1 is clearly an acute angle, which means its measurement should be less than 90. And angle 2 is clearly an obtuse angle, meaning its measurement should be somewhere between 90 and 180. That's how we use a protractor, and that is the end of the third video.